Welcome to Business Reporter's Future of Supply Chain campaign. Today, we're discussing the single biggest challenge faced by businesses as they try and build next-generation supply chains. That challenge can be summed up in one word: data. To help us understand why it's such a challenge and some possible solutions to this problem, we're joined by Jesper Benneker of GateHouse Logistics. Good morning, Jesper.
Good morning.
So, we're facing a business environment that is increasingly marked by globalization, complexity, and increasing volatility. When a company is faced with that and thinking about how to improve their supply chain, what are the big challenges that they face?
I think you mentioned it quite well in the opening, is about data. In the supply chain, everybody is data hungry. Our belief is we're looking at the data in the supply chain. There's two types of data. There's the big data used to predict future consumer behaviors and demand. And then there's the other part of data which we say is the data used for doing your day-to-day business execution. In many cases, I believe shippers, they would like to obtain that data and find that particular data string that will give them that real-time visibility. But I also believe they often feel like that's finding a needle in a haystack. So pinpointing that data, which is the relevant data for them to have a day-to-day business supply chain excellence, is a challenge.
In a stat I read recently, it said that 80% of the data created and used in the supply chain comes from outside of the originating company. So how does that impact them on their abilities to make changes and become more efficient?
I think that's a huge impact. I think the 80% number actually tells a lot around that shippers are using a lot of subcontractors, which again use subcontractors and potentially use subcontractors. So the market is extremely fragmented. In the ground transportation, as an example, the different subcontractors, one day they work with each other, next day they're competitors. It's very quickly then creates a situation where their data is created on different islands in silos. Finding that data and having that securely distributed to the shipper, for the shipper to use it for real-time analytics, exception management, is a challenging task.
It sounds like you've done a lot of thinking around this issue. Could you just elaborate a bit on your solution?
In our solution, the way we approach it is there are two problems to be solved. The first one is the fragmentation of the carriers, which again comes with a fragmentation of different telematics suppliers. In Europe, you have north of 400 different telematics suppliers. Each of these telemetric providers have their own language, and these different data streams need to be organized and unified. That's the first thing. The second thing is actually looking into ensuring that the right data is shared between the carrier and the shipper. And that's a very challenging thing as well.
Just to go back a little bit, you said there are over 400 telemetric suppliers in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Even with that much fragmentation, you believe your system can work?
Absolutely, yeah. The system is already working. Among our customers, we have global e-commerce companies, global top 5 transport service providers, as well as automotive manufacturers. They all use our service in a variety of different purposes. As an example, the e-commerce company, their entire transport control tower is actually powered by data that we collect from their subcontractors and distribute to them when those subcontractors are doing a movement for them.
What's been the reaction from transport providers to having to share data?
In the beginning, they were reluctant because they didn't really understand what happens when is data shared and so forth. But in our talks with them, when they really understood what we're doing and us being a visibility company, it's important that we also create visibility to the carriers of how we treat the data and when we distribute that. Over time, it's actually become quite good because they also start to see the benefits of it. As an example, you have the e-commerce guy. They are monitoring whether the trucks arrive on time. So let's say a truck is scheduled to arrive at 3 p.m. on a Friday, and it doesn't arrive until 5 p.m. at that distribution center. Then they will automatically mark that as a late in the KPI. But having the fact that they are looking now at the same data, what they can see is that that truck may actually have arrived in time, but was prevented to get into the distribution center due to a congestion created by other carriers. And thereby that event does not count negatively on their KPI.
So it looks like you've gone some way to kind of addressing some of their concerns, but there still seems to be a lot of fear around what if the data falls into a competitor's hands or something like that happens. So how do you reassure them that you're looking after their data properly?
So what we've done is we developed two things that is essential for this. The first thing is we basically develop what we call a carrier bill of rights. So the carrier can see and understand what do we do with their data. It also creates a common understanding between the shipper and the carrier, what type of data they should expect to get as a shipper and what type of data is shared from the carrier side. The second thing we've done is we created an industry standard around what we call the tracking window. So now both parties exactly know when and how and under which circumstances the data is being shared.
Okay, so beyond the data issue, what other areas do you see sort of hampering better collaboration throughout the supply chain?
The industry on the transportation, ground transportation, there's a lot of these guys that have been in business for many years, and they used to do business in a certain way. They just recently started to embrace this whole new IoT 4.0 connected environment. They need to continue embracing it more in order to have this whole collaboration to improve on having data freely flowing in a secure manner. But I think moving forward, cloud computing is going to be important. IoT, blockchain is probably going to be quite important as well. And then edge computing.
If we sort of fast forward 5 years, what do you see as the big challenge for the supply chain?
Talk about the visibility space of the supply chain which we're in. I think the challenge is going to remain the same. We see that manufacturing out of factories gets more and more automated, smart factories, smart warehousing. It will continue to put a pressure on the logistics service providers to be able to share data because people need to know where the goods are in transit because everybody wants to optimize inventory. So I think moving forward, a very essential and critical part is that the market will have neutral data intermediators, which are able to share data when relevant between carriers and the shippers.
Jesper, thank you very much.
You're welcome.